achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I'm your host, Scott Johnson, and this is the UFC 154 post-fight podcast. And on this podcast, I'm going to break it down into a couple of sections. I'm going to look at first my fights and predictions, then I'm going to look at the actual bet pack, and then at the very end of the show, I'm going to draw the winner for the Bet Pack Heart and Glory free t-shirt giveaway. You buy a bet pack, you get an opportunity to win a Heart and Glory t-shirt of your choice. Now, on that note, starting with the next event, which is the next UFC on Fox event in December, 3 more prizes up for grabs. So Heart and Glory will be supplying another t-shirt. But also, walkoutwear.com just got their big website up and running, and Walkoutwear sells all of the Round 5 UFC figures, some replica belts, and I'm sure they're going to expand in some other fantastic UFC merchandise. But what they're going to allow me to do is 3 winners, 3 who will buy my bet packs, I'll draw their names. Each one of them will be credited with $10 into an account when they sign up there. So if they buy a figure for $14.99, it's only going to cost them $4.99 plus shipping and handling and all that stuff. So, you spend your $10 in my bet pack, and you will receive, and you get one of those winners, and there's 3 of them, you'll get $10 back. And around Christmas, that's a fantastic little bump if you want to pick up a present for yourself or someone else, one of your MMA fans on the list. Now, as far as UFC 154 is concerned, I'm going to get into my predictions in a second. But one thing I did notice is they upped the pay-per-view price. Now, I know George St-Pierre is one of the biggest draws, if not the biggest draw the company has, but they bumped that pay-per-view price up, and I thought that was a horrible decision on Dana White, whoever made that decision. Pay-per-view numbers are dragging, and now GSP has been out for 18 months. His long-awaited return comes along, and I'm sure there's lots of people who went, well, maybe I'll get some friends together, maybe we'll order that pay-per-view tonight because it's George, and all of a sudden, boom, the price is up. Oh, that's significantly higher than the last time I purchased it. I'll pass. I'll stream it online. I'll do whatever. What Dana's doing is by upping that price every time, he's pushing people to go stream online or go to the bar and watch it there or do whatever they have to do not to pay for the event that amount. They need to be reasonable with their prices. If they're going to put it up to $60, they need to set something up where if you buy 2 pay-per-views, you get the 3rd pay-per-view half price. That's going to encourage people. Basically, jacking the price up, it's going to do the total opposite, and I think that's a bad business move on their part, and they really need to give their heads a shake as far as that is concerned, because you probably lost some people who probably would have paid the lesser price and actually purchased it to watch GSP return and pick up the victory. Either way, that's enough of my intro. Let's get into my fight-by-fight breakdown. First fight of the night's in the featherweight division, Darren Elkins, Steven Siler. I took Siler to win that fight by submission. Darren Elkins, I went back and forth on that fight, and Darren Elkins grounded a decision victory, exactly what I expected he was capable of doing. I just thought Siler had the ability to catch him in a submission. But Darren Elkins is a tough veteran. He's a sleeper in this division. He's capable of implementing his game plan, and Siler really had no answer in that fight. Going forward, I think Elkins versus Cub Swanson would be a very entertaining bout. Give him that push and see where they go from there. Bantamweight division, Ivan Menjivar submits Azamat Gashimov. I took Menjivar by TKO in this fight, so it got me my first win of the night. Menjivar is a tough veteran guy. He did a nice job with that submission, beautifully executed off the bottom. And I think up next, Ivan Menjivar versus Takeya Mizugaki would be a fantastic veteran bantamweight matchup. I would love to see those two go at it. I would really look forward to that, so make that happen, Dana. Matt Riddle, John McGuire. I took Riddle by decision, and Matt Riddle wins by decision. Good effort on his part. He did enough to keep John McGuire from getting into his comfort zone. He used his size well. He used his striking. McGuire's striking looked a little bit better than it did against Hathaway, and I give him credit, but Riddle just showed, how to shut McGuire down and keep, he didn't work the range that well, but still he stayed on the outside enough to be successful. And again, I'm only giving you who I think the winner should go on to face next. I think Matt Riddle needs to step up. A lot of people aren't very high on Matt Riddle. I think Matt Riddle needs to step up, and I would love to see Matt Riddle versus Eric Silva. Silva needs to come down a little bit after that loss to John Fitch. Don't push him up into the upper echelon. If he loses a couple more fights, he could be right out of the consideration as a future contender. So I think Matt Riddle versus Eric Silva, the winner gets a nice push in the next round. I think I'd like to see that fight and see what Riddle's really capable of against that next level competition. Moving to the FX preliminary fights, Antonio Carvalho defeats Rodrigo Dam by split decision. So it's my 3rd straight win. I took Carvalho in that fight originally by knockout. Rodrigo Dam showed he has some power in his hands, but Carvalho, I really focused on the lead kicks in my prediction, and that's how Carvalho got the job done, hammering in that lead leg and did enough damage to get the nod from the judges. A split, close, but either way, I thought it was an entertaining, technically based fight. I really enjoyed that one. Antonio Carvalho, he's won 2 in a row. A good matchup for him will be against Diego Nunes, I think, going forward. Both those guys, very capable, excellent leg kicks, very explosive on the feet. I'd like to see that matchup happen in the featherweight division. Up next, a fight that really wrecked my night. John Makdessi defeating Sam Stout by decision. I took Stout to win that by decision. Stout was my #1 confidence pick, but I'll get to that in a second. Basically, I was disappointed with Sam Stout because Makdessi beat him in the first round the same way he beat him in the second round and the third round. He kept pumping that jab, backing Stout up whenever Stout came forward, mixing in some kicks. He did more damage, essentially. Stout looked, wasn't able to change gears. I think that's one of the issues with him is he's just unable to change gears. He did attempt some takedowns, but they were frantic and they weren't well set up, and they looked poor on the, they did not look like they were done well, and Makdessi wasn't concerned with them at all. Stout was putting pressure on. He's got a little bit wild. He was looking for that big overhand right for the big knockout win, and he just wasn't landing it, and Makdessi was using a very simple, straightforward approach and picked him apart and won that fight via decision, and full props to John Makdessi. I did get something right in that fight, and I'll talk about that in the bet packs. Makdessi, I'm not 100% sure where I'd like to see him go from here. Maybe John Makdessi versus Thiago Tavares, and again, put him up against a guy who can strike, but also a guy who can grapple, and see where he belongs in that division. Light heavyweight belt, Cyril Diabate submitting Chad Griggs. Cyril Diabate, the K1 level kickboxer, picks up his first UFC submission. I had Chad Griggs by TKO. He did what I wanted him to do, and that was go out and attack Diabate. And I went back and forth on this fight too. Originally, I was on Diabate for a while, then I went to Griggs, and I eventually settled on Griggs, hoping he could grind him into the wall and eventually break him. But Diabate caught him coming in, hurt him badly, broke his nose, and Griggs, full props, coming after him. I don't think we're going to see him back again. It's 2 submission losses in a row in the UFC, and he didn't get out of the first round in either one of them. I think he'll get maybe a cut, especially with some light heavyweights coming over from Strikeforce in the near future. For Cyril Diabate, his striking looked good. He showed he could use his length, and that's something that makes him very dangerous. And a submission game, full props for him to picking that up. I would not mind seeing Diabate versus Thiago Silva. Thiago Silva coming off a big win over Stanislav Nedkov. I think it'd be a very interesting striking battle, and the winner of that fight maybe gets a little promotion up into the next level once again. Finally, rounding out the preliminary card, we had Patrick Cote defeating Alessio Sakara by disqualification. The sweetest words that Patrick Cote has ever heard. Alessio appeared to TKO him, but landed several undefended shots to the back of the head, and it resulted in Dan Miragliotta and company overturning that fight. And that was the right move. Cote, I had heard from Frank Trigg in the pre-show, had been told, lose this fight and you will be cut. And I don't know how this is going to go about with the fact he won by disqualification. Cote did what I wanted him to do, and that was eventually go in and bull rush Sakara, but Sakara showed he's dangerous, he's got power, and I was really, even though I picked Cote, Sakara had a lot going for him in this fight, even with this chin issue. I went with the statistics and the odds-on situation that Cote would be able to clip him, and he did hurt him early, but Sakara got the better of him. Had he, Sakara wins that fight had he just altered his approach and gone with shots not to the back of the head, obviously, and he would have finished Cote, because Cote was hurt, and that's props to Sakara, because Cote's never been officially TKO'd other than the injury to Anderson. But honestly, what I'd like to see happen, Cote, Sakara 2, it looked like it had fireworks going on. Let those two go at it, get an actual winner, and then we'll move on from there. Sakara's had some bad luck, and I feel really, with injuries and illness, and now he loses a fight that he actually should have won. Tough one there, but with the Cote win, I went into the main card with an overall record of 4-3. Not a great set of preliminary fights. I really needed Sam Stout to come through for me. Either way, let's go to the main card. Pablo Garza, Mark Hominick. I took Mark Hominick by TKO. Garza wins by decision. I wanted the first round. I expected the first round of that fight, like Hominick attacking Garza, to be spread out over 3 rounds with some ground work employed. But Garza did a nice job, and he did what Sam Stout couldn't do, and that was Sam Stout couldn't do in his fight, that was change gears. Hominick, other than a couple shots by Garza and catching him late, Hominick was eating him up on the feet. Body shots, landing a straight right or a cross right was very well done by Hominick. And then Garza decided, no, I'm going to take this fight to the ground, and he implemented a superior ground game. He busted Hominick up effectively, and Mark really didn't have a lot to offer off his back, and when he did attack, it just wound up getting him in deeper and keeping him on his back as opposed to getting something to, getting some offense off and getting this fight back to the feet. Either way, I think that could be it for Mark Hominick. 4 straight losses. The guy gives effort, but he is relatively one-dimensional, or at least against a guy who can control him on the mat. That takes Mark Hominick's ability to win those fights drop off the table, and he's an excellent fighter in the sense that he's an excellent striker, and he can really goes out and gives effort. And I would not be shocked if they see him if he gets let go and he'll latch on with Bellator or even the World Series of Fighting, I would guess, and get some premier opportunities. And he could come back absolutely. For Pablo Garza, nice little pick me up in the division for him. And Garza versus Jimmy Hedis might be an interesting matchup. I could see ground game. Hedis is coming off a loss, which is a little bit disappointing. But I think that would be an interesting matchup to see how those two play. I don't know they don't like pitting winners and losers together. Either way, I think that matchup makes sense to me because Garza's had previously lost 2 in a row. Up next, Rafael Dos Anjos defeating Mark Bocek by decision. My prediction, Dos Anjos by decision. Love this fight. Bocek's a grappler from the word go, and Dos Anjos did an excellent job defending his takedowns and then lighting him up on his feet. Very happy with Dos Anjos. This guy deserves a push to the next level. He is a sleeper in the division. If he puts a couple more wins together, he could be in the title conversation very soon. For Bocek, he just couldn't implement his ground game, and that's where his game comes up short. If he can't get the ground game working, he's going to struggle to win fights. And Ben Henderson beat Mark Bocek, but he did not beat him as badly as Rafael Dos Anjos did. Effective win by the Brazilian. For Dos Anjos, I don't have an actual winner set up for him. Coming up at UFC 155, Jim Miller takes on Joe Lozon. I like to see Dos Anjos face the winner of that, and if he wins that matchup, it's time for a big push, I think. That will be an excellent fight either way. I really like what Rafael Dos Anjos brings. Good for him. Great prediction in that sense. For me, I really like that one. Francis Carmont defeating Tom Lawler in the sleeper fight of the night. I took Carmont by submission. He gets the win here. I actually thought Tom Lawler won the fight. He imposed his game more. Carmont was on the defensive side of things and really was not in a hurry to get any offense off, and I was really disappointed because I thought Francis Carmont had some momentum going forward. Yes, he is 4-0 in the UFC, but this loss will knock him back to an FX preliminary or an FX main card fight. And the opponent I have picked out for Francis Carmont, I think Carmont versus Ricky Fukuda would be a very interesting fight because Fukuda is the type of guy who's going to make Carmont work. And Fukuda has excellent takedowns, and his striking is certainly above average. And I think that would be a very good matchup either way. And again, if Carmont can rebound and pick up a winner for Fukuda, then he goes on to the next level of competition for Fukuda, coming off the win over Tom DeBlas. If he gets a win there, I think he gets the push either way. Carmont Lawler, I don't want to talk about it anymore. It was a letdown of a fight. Co-main event, Johnny Hendricks. Wow, 46 seconds. That's like punch-out style knockout of Martin Kampmann. I'm talking about the punch-out video game for Nintendo where he just landed a shot and Kampmann went directly backwards and slid, and I'm really glad Hendricks didn't land that second shot flush because Kampmann would have got 2 or 3 inches taller. I took Martin Kampmann to win that fight by decision, and I thought I wanted to see Johnny Hendricks, how he fared against a talented striker who had better striking defense than he'd faced all his career, and Hendricks showed he can land that shot. Did the same thing to John Fitch, and that was very impressive as far as I'm concerned. So good for Johnny Hendricks. His next fight, it should be what Dana talked about, because you got to give these, when you say this could be a title eliminator, a number one contenders bout, and the guy wins as impressively as that, Johnny Hendricks should be fighting George St-Pierre for the title. 100% my opinion there. For Martin Kampmann, I feel bad for the guy. Again, on the cusp, climbs back up. The guy's taken a lot of damage in his career, and that's a tough one. For him, I'd like to see Martin Kampmann versus Josh Koscheck. I think it'd be a very effective fight, and both those guys are kind of on the outside looking in now. The winner would get a push back up. Either way, Kampmann versus Kos is the way to go, and Hendricks, Dana, give him the title shot, please. That's the way that fight should, that fight effort and result should get him a shot at the gold. Finally, George St-Pierre, Carlos Condit. George is back. What an effective game plan. He came out and he did not get the finish, but he beat Carlos Condit pretty much pillar to post short of that third round where Condit caught him. Good for George St-Pierre, and to come out and be as humble as he was, saying, yes, ring rust existed. Carlos Condit is a difficult opponent, and even though Carlos is on the defensive, he is a tough guy to handle with, and George St-Pierre showed us that. Good fight. As I said, GSP versus Hendricks should be next. George has made it very clear. They just said in the intro, when he left, since he's left, the division has completely changed. You've got, obviously, Carlos. You've got Johnny Hendricks coming up. You've got Nick Diaz floating around. You've got some serious contenders that George has not faced yet and needs to deal with that as far as I'm concerned. So good for George coming up with that win. Good for the fact that he didn't commit to the Anderson Silva fight. I want to see Anderson fight John Jones, whether that'll happen or not. I want to see George St-Pierre defend his title a couple times before he looks at an Anderson Silva fight. For Carlos Condit, back down. He'll probably get himself back up. He's still a relatively young guy. Work his way back into contention. I would like to see Carlos Condit take on the winner of BJ Penn versus Rory McDonald, which is on the Fox card. And the reason, I know it'll be winner versus loser, but I think McDonald Condit, that rematch should happen. Absolutely, it would be a very good fight. Or if Penn beats McDonald, that fight's been scheduled a couple, or at least once in the past and didn't happen. So let's make that happen. But either way, I was very entertained with George's effort. He did a nice job, and he recovered. Condit caught him. It was, you look at how that fight shook, that sequence of events played out. Condit threw a 1-2, and you can see George's field of view. He had relaxed after the 1-2 came, and basically, okay, and he focused on Carlos, and out of nowhere, that kick came up and clipped him, hurt him, but George showed he's not the guy everybody thinks he is, that he's just going to turtle up when he gets cracked, because he got cracked hard as the hematoma on his head showed. He did a nice job of recovering, tying Carlos up, and not only tying him up, he went back and got that round back in a nice effort. Showed, you're not going to hurt me, and I'm not going to go away. I'm going to actually win the round, is what he did. It was effective. George St-Pierre is the welterweight champion, greatest welterweight champion of all time. Continued to defend that title, and maybe, I would say, if you face Hendricks and beat Hendricks, I'd still love to see George St-Pierre versus Nick Diaz happen. I think that would be great for the sport. Get through those two fights and then start talking about an Anderson Silva super fight. Either way, I enjoyed UFC 154 short of the one fight I've already mentioned. Good night. Prediction record overall, 7-5, because I did take George St-Pierre by decision. I feel like I could have done better. And of course, Costa Philippou was my number one confidence pick. It comes off. I could have easily been 8-5. I also could have been 7-6. I recognize that, but I was disappointed with that fight coming off. 7-5, not my best effort, but certainly not the worst in the world. Let's get to my bet pack now. So if you purchased my bet pack for this event, it was $10. Even with a 7-5 record, there were some profitable situations in that bet pack that I exploited. I did only hit one winning parlay, which was a little bit of a disappointment. And a lot of it came down to the fact that Sam Stout did not win his fight. Looking at the Sam Stout situation, I had Sam Stout parlay with Francis Carmon and Antonio Carvalho, which cost me there. I had, where else did I have Sam Stout? I had Sam Stout parlay with Rafael dos Anjos, Matt Riddle, and Patrick Cote, so it cost me there as well. So a couple parlays had Stout got the job done. Looking at the fight-by-fight breakdowns, even though I picked Steven Seiler, I suggested a bet on Darren Elkins would be a decent play, especially as he became the underdog in that fight, and he was the on the betting lines. So I said take Darren Elkins with some value, and that would have been a decent bet there. Moving right along, Matt Riddle, my prediction was pretty right on for my betting advice. So with Ivan Menjivar, even though I said Menjivar, it was up against an interesting situation with a lot of unknowns with that Russian fighter. Either way, keep going. Carvalho, I took Carvalho and broke that down. For Sam Stout, John McDessie, I was on Stout I had, as I said, Costa Philippou was my number one confidence pick. And Stout was number 2, so obviously when Philippou pulls out, Stout moves up a position. Disappointing in that fight that he didn't change levels. I really did not back John McDessie. I felt that he, did not fare well against Anthony Njokuani, and I felt that Sam Stout could exploit some of the things that Njokuani was able to get, do against McDessie. Either way, disappointed in that sense. Didn't have no profit off that fight, except for a big prop, and I'll talk about that in a second. Mark Bocek versus Rafael dos Anjos. Dos Anjos started as a pick'em, and I said early on, and get on that fight, the value's going to drop, and it did. Dos Anjos was down to $1.50, sometimes in the $1.40 range before that event was all over, or before the fight started, and I was on Rafael dos Anjos from the get-go, so that worked out well. Griggs Diabate, nothing to say there. I jumped on Griggs, and that was the wrong call. He aggressively rushed at Diabate, and Diabate did a nice job catching with a counter and putting him away. Alessio Sakara, Patrick Cote. I keyed on Sakara's chin. Yes, Cote got the disqualification win. I'm not going to talk about it. It's a win. I don't really feel it's a win because of the way it happened, but either way, at least it's a W in the stats column. Pablo Garza, Mark Hominick. I picked Hominick, but I suggested not to go too overboard with him. I felt there was, he was the better striker, but there were some vulnerabilities there, and I wasn't going to, go too in depth with him. Up next on the bet pack, Philippou versus Ring. I stayed away from that one. Carmont, Tom Lawler. I said take Francis Carmont, and I want to see him maybe a triple play, Carmont, Philippou, and Stout against Stout coming up and hurting me in that sense of Philippou fight not happening. Either way, Carmont got the win. Not much to say there. Cam and Hendricks. Again, I said Johnny Hendricks is a dangerous guy. I like Campman as a dog. The reason I was on Campman is because I saw some things in the Hendricks-Cost fight that told me if he got up against a technical striker with a reach advantage who could work that distance, he would have trouble. And he might have had that fight played out, but he put Campman away so quickly. I did suggest a small bet on Johnny Hendricks, maybe parlaying with a couple of guys. And, so there was value there. For the George St-Pierre, Carlos Condit fight, I was not going to bet on George St-Pierre, even though he had some decent value. I did provide one bet on that fight. I'll talk about that shortly. I said put some money in Carlos Condit at $3.40 and sometimes close to $4 on some sites because he was a threat, and it didn't work out in that sense. But again, I said it was just a small bet, and I said if you don't have the cash, don't go overboard with it. So I had some winning advice despite going only 7-5. I think there was some money to be made there. My top 5 confidence bets, as I said, Philippou number 1 off the board with Ring getting sick. Sam Stout slides up number 1 and is a disappointment. Number 2 is Francis Carmel. He got the job done for me there. Number 3, Antonio Carvalho. So I got number 2 and 3 right. Number 4 is Martin Kampmann. He disappointed me and let that down. And number 5, Matt Riddle. So I hit my number 2, 3, and 5 confidence picks. So not a bad night in that sense. Going 3 for 5. Value picks. Again, Kampmann was number 1. He comes up short. Rafael Dos Anjos, number 2. Value picks, certainly. I liked his value no matter where it went, even when it got low. But get on him early, buy or get that money in when he's got the highest value. He was my number 2 pick. And I had Matt Riddle's number 5 because some sites had him as $1.67 when it opened up. And I thought that was an excellent bet there to jump on that. So I nailed 2 value bets. Not my favorite series of value bets ever, but certainly made a little bit of money. Prop bets. One of my best nights ever for prop bets. Even though I got McDessie Stout wrong, I said go over the total of 2.5, and it hit big time. Stout McDessie going the distance. Chad Griggs, Cyril Diabate, got that fight wrong, but I said go under the total of 1.5 rounds, and I got that right. Alessio Sakara, Patrick Cote, it initially looked like I had that fight wrong as well, even though Cote got the win, but I said take the under there, so that's 3 prop bets. Francis Carmel I said to win by submission, which did not come through, and I said Martin Kampmann paying $7.25 to win by knockout. You never know. Hendricks has never been knocked out, but you have to wait and see what that how he would have reacted had Kampmann landed some nice counter strikes or clipped him. But either way, that was a pure value bet, and I did say that right in there, as I can't pass up on a price like that. And finally, my 4th correct prop of the night, George St-Pierre by decision, paying $1.61. If you were going to bet on St-Pierre, that was the way to do it. It's not a bad value to $1.61. Condit's such a tough guy, and George St-Pierre, even though he has a history of, he wanted to come out and finish, he has a history of decisions, and I thought $1.61 was decent. So 1 winning parlay, some decent advice, 3 of my 5 confidence picks correct, 2 value picks, and 4 props. So there was money to be made, even though I wasn't overly impressed with my value picks for this event. For my bet pack with this event. I've gone 6-3 and 7-5 my last 2 shows. I'm certainly looking to rebound with the next one, and I'll talk about something briefly in my conclusion. So UFC 154, I went 7-5 overall. So not a great night, not a night I'm going to be proud of at 7-5. And that's again my number 1 fight comes off the board, which certainly did not help. Either way, I felt I should have been. A good night is 8-4 on 12 fights. I think a good night, and of course everything above that is very solid. But 7-5, the bare minimum, where I can at least say I won a couple more fights than I lost. I'm going to put a couple weeks before UFC on Fox, so I have lots of time to research, and I will do my best to pick those up. Now I'm going to be putting 2 separate betting packs together for the next event. There's going to be the regular $10 betting pack. That's not going to change. I'm also going to do a $5 bet pack. And what that bet pack is going to consist of is I already ranked my top 5 confidence picks. But what this new pack is going to consist of is I'm going to rank every single fight 1 through 10, 12, how many fights there are, telling you obviously the top 5 will be the same as my regular confidence pick, but here are the rest of the fights where I feel they fall. And I'm also going to do something that most predictors wouldn't do. I'm going to take a look at all the people I did not predict, that I picked against, and I'm going to tell you the top 5 guys that have the best value based on what they pay that I think are decent investments, even though I didn't predict them. A lot of predictors aren't going to do that for you guys. They're going to say, well, I'm predicting him. That's because he's going to win the fight. I'm not stupid like that. I understand, as this is a perfect example of, I might predict a fight and see things, and MMA is crazy, or I might overlook things. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I never lead anybody to believe that. But I'm going to give you my best 5 picks of the fighters I picked against based on value and based on where there's room to make money if you want to pick against something I predicted. So that'll be a $5 pack, so certainly take a look at that. And finally, let's get into the draw for the Heart and Glory t-shirt. As I said, Walkout Wear will be supplying 3 prizes for the next event as well. So 4 prizes, lots to win. And I put all the names into a Boston Bruin hat, which I have lots of at home. I will draw out a name, unfold it, and second best number of bet packs sold. And I'll be sending an email to this individual to contact them. But congratulations to Jerry B. I won't go into the rest of his email address. You have won a Heart and Glory t-shirt. They will contact you, and you can follow instructions for their Jerry B. Actually, long-time buyer of my bet pack, so kind of nice to see one of those guys pick up a victory. But pick up a prize. As I said, the next bet pack, 4 prizes up for grabs. Thank you very much to all the customers who purchased, and I hope to have a better showing next time. But again, as I said in this, there was some money to be made here, especially with the props. And I hope you enjoyed the event, and I hope you made some money. I made a little bit of cash. Either way, as always, thank you very much for watching, or listening in this sense, and I will see you back here very shortly.